This video is a conversation between me and my mentor, Harlan Miller, on property management. Please enjoy, and I hope you learn something. The one question I had was, so let's say a tenant has a complaint, like something broke or something went, like let's say something broke. How do you go about fixing that?
So, with my company, we use outside vendors. So we generally develop relationships with vendors. So it depends on what broke. And then we, because we're big enough, we have an in-house maintenance person that does mostly work orders. So that's what the term would be. A tenant would submit a work order. So if you want to kind of talk a little bit about the process and then how we would handle it, we use a software platform called AppFolio, which is it probably may be the biggest software in our industry right now, but it's one of the main players. They have an internal ability to dialogue with the tenant, but then we also went out and found an ancillary company called Property Meld, which is focused exclusively on handling the maintenance work order process between a tenant, the vendor, and the management company. And its main benefit is the real-time ability to communicate with text and, email and kind of keep everybody on point. Starting out, a new property manager maybe wouldn't have either of those at their disposal. It'd be more just phone call or text and, communication that way. But ultimately, the goal, because of manpower and everything, is to get everything into a technological space where you can, in real time, communicate very quickly without having a lot of moving parts or emails or things like that. So to give you kind of a walkthrough of tenants, let's say a tenant submits a work order because the toilet is running. So we would get that work order. It would be reviewed by our in-house staff that oversees the incoming maintenance work orders in Property Meld, and then she would determine, is this an in-house concern or is it a vendor concern? So, repairing a leaking toilet is something that doesn't require a license. It's mainly probably going to be the rubber stopper or whatever that's in the bottom of the toilet. So we would put that into the queue of our maintenance technician in-house. He would then, based on the tenant's desire of being home or not, he would then schedule that, quickly, and then go out and assess the issue, acquire the required parts for repair, and repair it. And that would be a process. If it were, say, something that were more major, like maybe a breaker keeps popping in an electrical panel, well, that's something that requires a licensed electrician. So we would then, email or text that out to one of our preferred electrical companies that we work with. They would generally schedule directly with the tenant through Property Meld, and then they would go out and, address the issue and repair it. If the problem is not tenant caused, so generally there's reasons why things break. One is age or functional obsolescence is the main reason. That would have to be weighed out by the technician or the vendor as to whether the cause was something that was not caused by the tenant. So let's use another example. If a tenant said their toilet wasn't flushing properly, and this is a real life story, and my maintenance technician went out and checked all the components in the bowl and in the tank, and everything there was looking normal, but there was a flow issue in the toilet. Many times we would have to pull the toilet completely, see if anything has gotten clogged in the bottom or maybe in the pipe. Maybe we'd have to use a snake, but if that doesn't solve the problem, we generally, a lot of times, will break the toilet open, and generally what we find is some sort of a child-related issue. A child dropped a Matchbox car down the toilet or some other foreign object, and it's caused the flow issue in the toilet. That would then be, the repair would be done, but there would be a bill assessed to the tenant themselves. So just to kind of give you clarity, a tenant is accountable to maintain the property and give it back in the condition in which the tenant received it. There are some minor normal wear and tear things that we could discuss, and we could get into that if you want, but generally, tenant is responsible for anything they damage. Main things that tenants tend to damage are like blinds, they damage carpeting, they mount a TV, which, by their lease generally, or they're not allowed to do, and put big holes in the walls for the anchors. All that becomes a tenant charge at the end, usually deducted from their security deposit. So.
Mm-hmm. So what would be like an example of something a tenant wouldn't be responsible for?
Anything that's functional. So, if a fridge stops cooling because the compressor started to leak, that would not be a tenant thing. Like I said, there's a term, maybe you're familiar with it or not, it's called functional obsolescence. It basically means that, things have a lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Another example that maybe would be surprising is, this is actually surprises my owner clients some, is that if a unit has carpeting is given a lifespan by a manufacturer. Well, generally in rentals, you're not putting in the highest quality carpeting. Not that you're putting in bad carpeting, you're just putting in more of a commercial grade carpet. Well, generally, most manufacturers are going to give that a 4 or 5 year life expectancy. So if a tenant moves into a unit, if we use a real life example, let's say you move into a unit and you lived there 1 year and the carpet was put in right before you moved in. And let's say you damaged the carpet. You, beyond cleaning, let's say, or beyond repair, you would not be responsible to replace that whole carpet. You would be responsible to replace 3 of the remaining years if it had a 4-year lifespan. You would get credit for the fact that the carpet had lost a year of its useful life. Now, if you lived there 4 years and moved out and you completely destroyed the carpet, by law, you shouldn't be charged because the carpet only had a 4-year lifespan, and the owner got out of the carpet what was expected. That's probably one that tenants and owners don't really understand, but it is a law, and it is something the courts have, ruled on. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like I said, anything that stops working, any sort of leaks that may happen that were not caused by the tenant that damage things in the unit would be on the owner's responsibility. So those are kind of all owner. Generally things like replacing light bulbs, sometimes batteries and smoke detectors, even though they kind of change smoke detectors to like a 10-year battery that lasts, and then you just kind of replace the whole system. But, things that tenants are expected to do is, obviously replace light bulbs, in their regular fixtures, things like that. Owners are generally, replace an AC filter is on a tenant. But when things break, not because they're caused by the tenant, but because they just age, then that always falls on the owner. Like, an owner may have to replace an entire HVAC AC system. Mm-hmm. They have to replace hot water heaters generally every 6 to 10 years. Appliances obviously, break and stop working. It's just going to be, it's always, here's how you can look at it simply. What caused the breakage or what caused the damage?
Yeah.
And that's really what we have to engage in, And to kind of speak to that, since you're going to be representing you represent the landlord. I mean, that's your contract. You're not going to go sign a contract with the tenant. So your client is the owner, and your job, in my opinion, is to protect the owner. So when you go out yourself, or you send a technician, or you send a vendor, you do have the role as the representative on behalf of the owner for accountability of the tenant. So you definitely want to make sure that if the tenant is the cause of the damage or cause of the issue or breakage, that they are charged and that they are held accountable. On the other hand, you are going to come across some owners and landlords that want to pass on all costs. Even, they have a 20-year-old carpet and the tenant owns it, but hey, the previous tenants that lived there for 20 years didn't damage it. They respected the carpet, and the carpet got more life than maybe it expected. It doesn't matter. Now one tenant comes in and treats the carpet poorly, maybe doesn't take their shoes off, whatever the cause is, the owner still really doesn't have a right to charge them, but some owners will try. That's kind of where you as a property manager are the liaison. Remember, you protect the owner, that's your number one objective, but you also take care of their client, the tenant. So you have a kind of a duty, and probably the hardest thing to let you know is that when you send out a maintenance technician or you send out a contractor, is that the tenant is going to maybe be there, and the tenant is obviously sometimes going to want to debate or negotiate or even reject that they have any obligation or duty to cover a cost of repair. There's an old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you send somebody out, the tenant's confrontational, they're confrontational with you. The easy way to do it would be just to bill the owner, because the owner's probably not going to see their property, especially if they live out of the area for years on end. I have owners that have never even seen the property that they own in Florida. So to me, that's the difficulty of this job sometimes, is that you have to stand firm and you have to protect your owner, and they should not be financially liable for things that a tenant absolutely caused damage to or broke. And sometimes property management companies and their employees have a difficult time with that. And I would actually give you one insight that I think a lot of property management companies don't do that I do. I require my maintenance technicians to study and know every detail of the lease, and I'll explain why that's valuable. The lease is the agreement that an owner and a tenant sign. And the lease gives clarity on how to handle almost everything. And so if you go out as a property management company representative representing the owner and you're addressing a tenant, if they've agreed to something in the lease, which is, they've agreed to maintain the property, they've agreed not to put holes in the walls, they've agreed not to, destroy the carpeting by never taking their shoes off and, dragging in dirt and grease. And so you can always refer to that, and they've already given their word of accountability to that lease. So they should not have an issue with being responsible when they're called to be responsible. And a lot of times, because my maintenance guys are so well versed on the leases, when many other management companies aren't, they are very comfortable and confident in talking to the tenant. But if they went in without that information, they probably would feel unequipped to know what is the rules. Kind of like we spoke about this last time, you were a little bit, I could tell by your response, you're a little bit shocked that tenants have to pay for things sometimes, because you probably went with the expectation that's just an owner responsibility, but it's not. It's a two-way street. We all have to take accountability for our actions, and that goes for a tenant as well.
So, one question I also had was, let's say, like a fridge broke, so that would be on the landlord. But you want to get it fixed as fast as possible, so how do you get the money from the landlord? Like, is there already a deposit account in place?
Great question. If you're doing it right, you are going to have a minimum of $500 in reserve with every owner. So to speak a little bit about that, generally when you take on a new client, you're going to have a contract with them, and part of that's going to say that due to the need to make emergency repairs like a fridge repair or an AC repair when it's above 80 degrees, or there's a toilet, if you only have one toilet, obviously that's an emergency. We are going to ask you as an owner to reserve $500 in our escrow account. That money will stay there, and that will allow us to make quick decisions on emergencies. And generally in your contract, just to kind of also add to that, you're generally going to have a sentence or a clause in there that gives you rights to represent the owner up to a certain point. So your contract may say, we reserve all rights to make a decision on your behalf for $500 or less, or $1,000 or less. I'd probably even try and raise that above $500 to maybe $700 or $800, because it's hard to fix some things for $500. Try and buy a fridge today for $500, almost impossible.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to put in your contract differentiation that, and define what an emergency is. So I would define, and there's probably more, but I'll list like 3. AC goes out above a certain temperature, we have a right to get that repaired and get that AC fixed. We may not have the right, we probably don't have the right to fully replace the system if that's what's needed, because that's a $3,000 or $4,000 cost, or even higher. We have the right to replace the fridge because of a tenant's, food items all get spoiled because there's a delay. That's not really, taking care of the business and the landlord, so we're going to get the repair guy out. And in my contract, it says we have the right to replace that fridge with a like kind appliance. Why is that important that I said like kind? Because what you will have owners do sometimes is the rental unit has a nice double-sided fridge with an ice maker and a water line, and then when the fridge breaks, the landlord sometimes will want you to go put in an up-down smaller fridge with no ice maker and no water line. I generally won't allow that to happen as a property manager because the tenant rented the unit with the fridge of a certain quality and condition, and they should get something of equal value.
Yeah.
So that's where sometimes you have to actually stand up to your owner and say, hey, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, we rented the unit with a really nice fridge, and now you're trying to downgrade that because you want to save on cost. But in reality, that's kind of violating the lease because the tenant signed the lease based on what was the unit had at the moment of signature. So it would be feasible that the tenant may ask for a rent discount because you have not given them equal value. And most owners will back off of that, and if they don't, then I if the tenant, is concerned about it, I will express to the tenant, well, you may need to talk to somebody or, see what you want to do or ask for a rent discount because you're right. It isn't, I can't take your beautiful stainless 32 cubic foot fridge with an ice maker and a water line and give you a 15 cubic foot, and a couple plastic trays and say, hey, you got the same thing. It's like, no, I don't. I got a family of 5. I got to have room. I can't fit enough groceries in there to even feed 2 people, so that's really where I would look at that. And one thing we do that's kind of special if a fridge breaks is we keep in our shop a large chest cooler. So we will, as a service, get some ice in a chest cooler, and we will provide that for any of their really perishable items. Because usually we can get a repair company out same day for an appliance, but if it's late in the day and they know the fridge went out at 5 o'clock at night, we may not be able to get somebody out till the next day. And so we're going to do our best to help them save that food. We don't continue to add ice if they know we need for 2 days. We'll say, hey, we provided this as a benefit to you and as a kind of an extra step that we take that most management companies may not do. But if your ice starts to go low because it takes a little while. We also are generally, if the appliance company comes out and says, hey, this fridge needs to be replaced, generally there's 2 options there. The appliance company we work with does sell, gently used appliances, which are generally a little cheaper than retail. And if they have something that we feel is quality and in good shape, we'll go that route. But we do spend most of our appliance purchases at Brand Smart because they generally do have the best pricing and commitment to turnaround time versus maybe a Lowe's or a Home Depot or some of the other appliance places. So we'll go to Brand Smart, and if it's the fridge, a lot of times if they have one in stock, we'll take that and our maintenance guys will install it. If they don't and it's something that needs to be delivered, then obviously we have to let the tenant know and tell them, hey, make sure you keep your perishables on ice or do what you need to. And the best thing too is, telling if the tenant don't open the fridge, because if you leave a fridge closed, usually it will actually maintain the food longer. Or you can even, put some ice in the fridge, or the freezer and close it, and it'll, help temp out the things. So, we just try and educate. I think that's a big thing too that I would add is educating the tenants, when these things come up, how they can best make sure that, they don't lose their food or other things like that. So, but one last thing too is time is very important to us. We pride ourselves on being, I would be bold to say that we're probably the fastest turnaround property management company for maintenance issues in maybe the country. Very important to us. I don't allow my tenants to wait on things that should get done. Now, with that said, if your toilet paper holder came loose on the wall, I'm not going to prioritize that the same as an AC system going down or your toilet not working and you only have one, or a fridge not working. Obviously there's degrees of necessity, but when we have an emergency, we take it very seriously.
Yeah. So. And then, so let's say you do have to take. Would it be like 500 in reserves per owner or per property / unit?
Per property.
Alright.
So if you had a client, now obviously if you had a large client that had 50 units, because here's the other thing that I would say about that. We require owners to let us cross-collateralize their units, and what that means is, like, let's use you again. You're the owner, and you have 5 units in my portfolio. In the contract, it says that I have the right to use proceeds from other properties to cover that. Generally what we'll do is we'll use it, and then we'll replenish it once the unit that borrowed it, has money again from future rents. Why that's important is because for you and the owner, one of the biggest things we're trying to stay away from is a bunch of back and forth conversation. I'll say this, it's where I actually aspire to be as a property management company, and it's pretty close to where I'm at. I went to a conference once in this industry in San Diego, and there was a gentleman there that ran a property management company in San Diego, and he has a rule with his clients. I can make any decision on your behalf without your approval. And he didn't stop at 500. He would replace a roof if necessary. Mm-hmm. And his reason for saying that is he said, you either trust me 100% or there's no reason for us to do business. And he's right. With that said, that's a pretty big ask of somebody that, hey, you just met me, you're signing a contract with me, and I get to make all decisions for your property. Yeah. But in reality, that is really the agreement they are entering into, and you kind of just have to trust. So what I would say is, you want to set it up so that you don't have to communicate with the owner, and that you actually build a level of trust with them where you don't even have to call them if it is a full AC system, because they completely trust that the AC absolutely needs to be replaced, that you have done a good job of pricing out, that you only work with vendors that are going to do quality work and stand behind it. And so, because back and forth just costs you time, manpower, it costs the owner time away from their life, and the reason they're paying you is so they don't have to manage the unit. So ultimately, that's always my goal, is to perform in such a way that my owners kind of just stay completely hands-on. Mm-hmm. Because it will kill your day if you're engaging an owner on every little thing that is going on in a unit. And I would advise you that if you take on a client that wants to be involved in every $5 issue in their unit, that you probably think twice about keeping them as a client.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Your role and job is to become professional and run great systems and have great customer service. And if you do all of those things, then you should be able to gently tell your owners to do what they do best, which is go to work and earn more money to buy more properties.
Yeah.
So
to replenish those reserves, you would take the money from the rent automatically and put it in the reserve?
Yeah, so if you have an automated system like we do, if you set a reserve, the system itself is always going to hold back money to cover that reserves. So with, future rent. So, but if you're starting out, you're probably going to most likely run, you can get some free software, some very expensive software, but you're not going to run out of them. In fact, that folio or a big company wouldn't even take you until I think you have like $50. So you would want to keep, a ledger and that has it. And, so now you say to your owner, hey, you have to keep $500 in the escrow to cover these things. And let's say you went out and used 3, you're going to then retain that for rents when you disperse the owner's rent at the end of the month or whenever you agree to disperse, and you're going to make sure to replenish that.
Mm-hmm. All right. What about like landscaping, for example? How does that work?
Well, I would break it into kind of just general lawn maintenance versus, it depends on the level of property. So, if you're managing a fairly simple residential house, you may not get into flowers and shrubs and trees and things like that.
Yeah.
And landscaping improvements that, you could, but, as far as just generally mowing the lawn and, weed whacking and all that, either the tenant could be held accountable for it, but I generally don't see that always go well. And then usually the property can end up getting fines from the city, which, the owner is then going to probably get upset with you. But obviously you can't drive by the property every week and make sure that the tenant mowed the lawn, or you would never make any money.
Yeah.
Generally, most owners are going to, I would probably require that the owner use a professional company, and then you would probably text the tenant once a month and say, hey, are you happy with the landscaping? Are they doing a good job? Can you take a picture? Because, you want to be in a relationship where the tenant can sometimes be your eyes and ears as well. Because again, like I said, no management company can be running by a property. Like literally most of us, one time a year, we're going to go in and do an inspection, usually around the 6-month mark. Any more than that, you would have to charge the owner, and the owner doesn't want to pay you to go out and do an inspection every week or every month, even trying to get them to even let you do it once a year, which I think is good, and it protects the property as necessary. Some companies actually require their owners to do a quarterly inspection, but again, you are taking revenue out of the owner's pocket every time because you can't do those things for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, landscaping. I'll just say, I think I told you this when I got on the first call, I generally only manage condos. Since I've been in Florida, when I was, in Minnesota or Arizona, I did manage, single family and things like that. But what I do like about condos is that you're only accountable for the paint in, unless the damage is caused from the inside, then you add the drywall. But the association itself is responsible for the drywall and everything outside of that. So you have to work with a lot less vendors, and the hardest part of this industry is coordinating and overseeing and finishing vendor-related issues.
Yeah.
So, just a thought. I mean, I'm not saying you follow my suit, but if you do get into houses and homes, now you're dealing with roofers, landscapers, pool guys, fencing, you name it, arborists for trees, whatever, because let's say you get a property with a bunch of fruit trees and one of them gets a disease. Well, you're probably going to have to, get an arborist or something out there to tell you what is wrong with it and how to fix it. So just, labor is kind of our most difficult part of this industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's maintaining the property. But yeah, so landscaping, I would say basic landscaping again would be passed on to the owner's expense, because tenants just generally don't show a consistency of mowing the lawn as needed and letting it grow a little bigger than it should, and then you end up even potentially having equipment problems, because if you let the grass go too long and you're beating up the lawnmower all the time, it could cause it to not even last as long or break. So those are all those things I think of, and trying to give the tenant experience where they kind of come there, live, and enjoy it. And if you can pass on some of those costs to them just through higher rent, that would be a better thing for you and the owner.
Yeah. So I also noticed some property management companies, they deal with the insurance and the taxes as well. Is that something you guys do, or no?
Only for bigger clients.
Okay.
Bigger clients that are, if I have somebody maybe 20 units or more, I do. But a one-off client that owns one property, absolutely not, because the liability that you take on to miss one of those things is paramount. Like, imagine you didn't pay the premium and the house burned, caught on fire. Huge liability issue. Not paying the taxes, potentially if you missed them for long enough, they could have their house foreclosed on. So I generally do not. I don't like to pay association dues either. If you're managing an association, I prefer that the owner handle that directly. But if they're adamant, or if they've been a client for a year or two, I obviously, to make their life easier, that's one of my goals. So if they've been with me for a while, I probably wouldn't let that happen with a brand new client, but maybe in year 2 or 3, I may revisit it and say, hey, why don't we bring everything in-house? Why it's a benefit to the owner to have you do all those things is because now they have one piece of paper that they can give to their accountant at the end of the year for tax purposes, and it has everything on it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing some things and they're doing some things, well, now they got to keep record of what they did and where did they write checks, and it's just a little more legwork for them. But I would stay away from paying their taxes, insurance, and association dues if you can help it.
Okay.
And one thing I'll add about association dues is the reason why association dues can be a nightmare is because especially when a unit goes vacant or you have a major repair issue and they want you to use the rents, the association doesn't care whether you're getting a rent check or not. They want to get paid every month. So now that $500 reserve may only cover the association dues for that month, and now you have no money. Mm-hmm. So having them pay those kind of gives you more room to just use that reserve fund for maintenance and maintenance only.
Okay. What about, like, if something small happens, like, at what level of thing happening with the property do you notify the owner?
Well, again, usually it's monetarily driven. So, like I said, in my lease right now, I think it is $500. Anything that happens that's under $500 isn't going to be discussed with the owner in advance.
Okay.
And in fact, just between you and I, every company's different, and I think transparency is excellent, especially with new clients. But a lot of my clients, like I told you, I've had clients for 17, 18 years. I go and do, again, let's say I've changed the toilet valve, and it's, $30 in parts and, $50 in labor or whatever. It's an $80 bill. I'm not even sending them a copy of that invoice or anything. I have it uploaded into the system. It's under their page, but unless they request that, they're just going to see a deduction on their owner statement at the end of the month.
Yeah.
It's going to identify on the owner statement what was done, but it's not going to have the actual invoice. Most of my owners don't want to deal with the invoices. They know that I have them. They know if their accountant needs one or something, they can get it, but they don't want all that paperwork,
Yeah.
But early on, year one clients, they generally want to see the Home Depot receipts or whatever. They want to see the invoice from the plumber. But, that's really a relationship thing, so.
Okay.
But again, you're trying to also make money as a company, so any man hour you have to use is a loss of revenue. So if you're, giving them an $8 Home Depot receipt every time you go and fix something simple, and then, this and that, it's going to kill your labor cost, and you're going to never make any money.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any more questions at the moment.
Okay. So if you want, we can continue to do a weekly call. You can come up with, we can do a Q&A like this if this works. I guess as a feedback, or do you want me to have shorter answers, or do you like that I kind of add in my thought processes?
I like how your answers are.
So, because I think that sometimes I could give you very simple yes, no, or one sentence answers, but property management has a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
And, the biggest thing that I would instill in you as a new property manager, if you want to be highly successful, is 3 simple philosophies. Number 1, your job is to protect the owner. And remember this, and if you haven't written this down or taken notes, the owner is your constant. A tenant is important, and who you're going to deal with way more. Like I think I told you, I wouldn't even talk to most of my owners, landlords, if I didn't initiate a call once a year. They just are comfortable with me, they trust me, and they're okay. And they like the fact that they get a check and don't ever hear from their tenant, and they don't ever have to deal with anything. And I handle everything. Like I replace $4,000 parts, and I don't let them know. I let them know in an email I'm going to do this, but I don't get their permission or approval. Well, that's because I've earned their trust. But number 2, you take care of the tenant. And what I look to do is be a little more customer service driven than most property management companies when it comes to the tenant. I came from the restaurant business. Restaurants are, if they're successful, have to be highly customer service motivated. And with the tenant, what I mean by that, I'll give you one little thing we do, which is completely different than probably any company. If you interviewed 100 companies, nobody would do this. Many companies will buy a little gift for a tenant when they move in. I make the joke, we used to give toilet paper roll and a plunger to every tenant that moved in. Well, we buy like 1,000 of those because this was when I was working for a big company that managed lots of units. But the problem was is the toilet paper was like the cheapest stuff you could get, and the plunger was like, cheap as well. So I said, here's the problem. You give this to them as a gift and you put a little bow on it, but all it did is chafe their backside because the toilet paper is so cheap that it's going to be miserable to use. And when they try to use the plumber the first time, it's so cheap it breaks in their hand and gives them a splinter. Seems like a good little gift, but it really isn't. What we switched over to was it's called the rapport process. So when you're interviewing a new applicant or you're touring the property or whatever, you're talking to them on the phone, my staff is trained to figure out what their favorite restaurant is or what their favorite beverage is. So when that tenant moves in, and do it without like coming out and asking, like you wouldn't say, hey, what's your favorite beverage or where do you like to eat? You'd do something like this, like, man, what time is it? Is it 12 o'clock, man? I'm really craving some Chipotle. And then you just kind of throw in, you like Chipotle? Nah. What's your favorite, place to grub? Oh, I like to go to, Panera. Well, then you just note that in their file. So if they actually become a tenant and they're going to move in, when they move in, we give them a Panera gift card and a nice, card that says thank you for choosing us as your future home. It's different. It's a different level because it's personal. And this, to me, still is a personal business on the tenant side and the owner side, but more so with the tenants. Knowing their favorite drink. We bought people scotch, beer, you name it, whatever, Coca-Cola, whatever, we'll buy your favorite drink, but we always find that out. And the best way to find it out is that we found out in COVID, because with COVID, we were doing no tours, we were meeting nobody, everything was contactless, using, special lock boxes and entry systems and stuff. Well, every applicant has to put down an emergency contact, and generally that's their mother, 99% of the time. Or their parents, one or the other, but usually it's the mother. Well, I want you to think about this. Like, you're 18. Imagine you're going to pick up now, leave your family's house for the first time and move to California.
Mm-hmm.
And your mother's probably going to be worried about you, right?
Yeah.
Well, now she gets a call from the management company where you're applying for a rental, and I call her up and I say, hey, Mrs. Smith, or, because I can't remember your last name, sorry, but or I don't even know if I got it from you, but, like, your son's applied for an apartment here and he's going to be moving in, and one thing that we really want to know is what is his favorite restaurant or place to eat. Mothers literally start crying because they're worried and they're thinking that we're the big bad landlord, we're going to rob you, cheat you, overcharge you, whatever, evict you. And now you get that call that says, not only do I want your son to live here, but I care enough about him to care about what he personally likes.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. And I've had girls cry and say my boyfriend doesn't even know my favorite restaurant. So what I'm trying to get at is business should have a level of or component of emotional attachment. And also what that does, and again, I'm not ever going to lie that some things that I do are psychologically driven so that it makes our life easier, the property management company. Just kind of weigh that out now. So you move into one of my properties. You could have moved into property A where they're going to give you the cheap toilet paper and the cheap plunger and you're going to have a sore backside. Or you move into a property like mine and you absolutely just love Domino's Pizza and you got a gift certificate for Domino's specifically, rather than even just a general gift card. We have a different level of attachment, right? Mm-hmm. You're probably going to be less rude to me than you are the person that gave you hemorrhoids. So It's like, that's to me what we try and be. We're just a little different. Taking that chest of ice when the fridge breaks. How many property management companies do you think you'd interview that will do that?
Not many.
We have temp ACs that I have to buy and keep in the shop, and we do charge the owner a little bit to put that in. But if your AC goes out and we can't fix it same day and it's over 80 degrees, we're going to put in a temp AC into your unit so that you can at least sleep in your couch. Maybe that's the only place where you have a window where it works, but at least you're going to be able to have a room in your apartment that you can be comfortable in. How many companies do you think do that?
Not a lot.
So that's because I wanted to say, I want to be the Chick-fil-A of property management. I'm not trying to be Checkers or Taco Bell. I'm trying to be Chick-fil-A. And to me, the difference in what I mean by that, if you don't already understand, is when you go to Chick-fil-A, they say, "How can I serve you?" and they mean it. The food is always consistent, and also they can turn a line of cars faster than, I don't even know how they humanly do it. Go to McDonald's, go to Popeye's fried chicken, there'll be one car in line, and it'll take you longer to get out of that line than if there was 100 cars at Chick-fil-A. I'm just saying, like, and because also if you run the Chick-fil-A level, a lot of people don't know, maybe you know this, Chick-fil-A does double the volume of a McDonald's.
Yeah.
They do like $5.2 million per location on average, and McDonald's does like 2.8. And then, the McDonald's is number 2. Well, how do they do that? Same size building. Well, they do it because their food is more expensive, because it's not, and I wouldn't even say the food's necessarily better quality by far. It's just that the service is 10 times better.
Mm-hmm.
And people will pay for service. So always remember that. People will pay for better service. Your tenants will pay more rent, which then makes it easier on you with the owners, and the owners will pay you more management fees and percentages, because you make it so simple for them.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I'd leave you with, is that, I believe that this industry will always have guys like you and I that may not be, your goal is to be a huge multinational property management company. That's great. But if it's not, you can still carve out a beautiful living in life by being a niche Chick-fil-A in an industry filled with Taco Bell owners.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the advice and that time.
Absolutely. So, probably one thing, we went over a little today, but I would say let's try and, for respect for your time and mine, because the problem I do have is I could talk to you about this for hours, because it's something I've done for most of my life, and I am passionate about it. I want to run a great property management company. I want to teach you how to buy investment properties. It's a passion of mine.
Yeah.
But it also, I have to be careful, because I have 9,000 other things to do. So, and you need to, go out and get some properties, or go out and get, whatever, or get a job, or do whatever you need to be productive. So let's plan to do half hour, 11 to 11:30.
All right.
We probably can do 3-4 questions. I'll make sure as I'm answering, I'll limit where I need to, and then, maybe, because again, the other thing on YouTube is, and maybe that's even too long, because, starting out, obviously you can do some shorts and stuff and pull some clips out of it or whatever, but, a lot of people aren't going to probably watch a half-hour video.
Yeah.
Unless it's super interesting or something.
Yeah.
But I think that, you're probably going to be better getting some sound bites, and I'm just, getting my opinion. You may know way more about marketing on YouTube than I do, because it's not my forte. Like I told you, marketing's not my strength. But, I'm thinking that, we probably want to think logistically about, like, hey, if YouTube becomes, because YouTube could become a leg for you in even attracting new clients.
Yeah.
I will say this, I'm impressed that as an 18-year-old young man, you want to go into property management, you're not just content to go and get a job at McDonald's or maybe the Gap or something, so that's impressive.
Thank
you.
And
2, that you've already had conscious thought that you want to record this journey, and if you do it right, that can actually be your sales pitch to some of these owners. I'm young, but I'm not mentally young.
Yeah.
I'm advanced in my thinking and the way I'm approaching this business.
Yeah.
Even you calling a guy like me is unusual. You're the first one in 20-some years that's called me and said, hey, I want to go into property management. Like I said, I've had a lot of younger guys call me about, hey, how do I buy a rental property, or how do I do this? How do I close a deal? And those are way more common, And I would invite you to kind of do what I said, and maybe we could even think tank it. And you could interview like 3 of us, because that's kind of cool too. Like you could, there's a management company in Jupiter that I know, Megan Breen, and then there's another lady named Helen that I like. And maybe you say, hey, can we get the 3 of you together for a 30 to 45 minute panel? And I'm going to ask each of you the same question and see what kind of answer I get.
That'd be cool if we could do it on like a Zoom too.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is even you and I probably should just set up a Zoom, and start to have both of us in the YouTube video, because, again, it's what you're doing is what I think would work, but it's also like you're playing back a recording and then maybe you're going to make comments on it or whatever. But just you playing a dialogue is, to me, a little less appealing than if they actually watched you and I dialogue.
Yeah.
Because because you're not getting the nonverbals, you're not getting the smiles or even the smirks or even the sarcasms or whatever, because it's harder to pull that out of a recording.
Yeah.
And I'm not. Neither of us are professional speakers, so. If we were, we could absolutely make that happen on a recording, but I'm not. I haven't spent most of my life, focused on that. So I may sound kind of drone actually at times, but if they saw my facial expression, it would add, the context or whatever. Same with you,
Yeah.
You might hear something that I say and think that's ridiculous, and it shows on your face. Well, that's good. That's what actually builds viewing, And, things too we'll get in, and I'll add them sometimes, is I'm going to add the layers of crazy that happen in our industry. We'll talk about how to deal with a dead body. We'll talk about things I've seen tenants do to units that are just nuts. I'll talk to you about crazy owners. Those are things that, are going to bring people to that maybe aren't even interested in property management, but they just like drama.
Yeah, it's a good story.
But anyway, I do commend you. I think number one, that you called me. A lot of guys will be like, yeah, I want to do this, and then they never show up again. So I want to give you some kudos. Hey, you showed up. I'll point it out 4 minutes late, but that's okay. Remember, I'm old school, so on time means 5 minutes early. But
all right.
I'm just messing
Noted.
with you. But in some ways it does matter, because you will have, especially you got to realize, a lot of owners of rental property many times are older.
Yeah.
Those things do matter. If you showed up 4 minutes late with an 80-year-old guy, you might not get a contract.
Yeah.
So just be conscious of this. I'm here to, show you everything I can and lift you up to success, but I am a very direct person. So if I see little nuances that I see like, ooh, that would make me a little, I don't know if this is a word people use, my daughters use it, cringy, then, I'm going to point it out to you and be like, don't be late to a meeting with an investment relationship. And the same with you. You can be transparent, really blunt with me. I'm not going to let my emotions get in the way of success.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
But like, maybe once we kind of get things laid out and we really look at the nuances of, and brainstorm out that, and I'll give it a little thought too, like, maybe we do move to a Zoom, maybe I need to get a better microphone than my phone or whatever, and we kind of, even though we're doing this as a relationship of me mentoring you and giving you insights on property management, it may very well work out for both of us as a marketing piece for our futures. You as a student willing to learn and wanting to grow and showing that level of maturity that most guys your age don't have, and me being willing to mentor you and take the time and give you advice and share years of experience. And then maybe, once we're into it, a month or two, maybe we reach out to Helen and Megan and say, hey, would you guys be willing to jump in on this? And because again, they could use it as a marketing piece.
Yeah.
Because hey, one thing I suck at is marketing. So,
Really?
So, and that I will admit, you ever say, hey, let's talk about your marketing, and be like, doesn't exist. Word of mouth only.
Yeah.
Systems process is pretty strong on. Understanding of the industry, I would say, is my biggest strength.
Okay.
I can talk with complete confidence and calmness about anything in this industry. And that's generally why clients like me, is because I don't get excited about anything. Tenants call me, I'm going to sue you for this, I got mold, I got this. They think I'm going to get excited. I'm just like, my blood pressure didn't move an ounce. You can't threaten me. You can't threaten me with litigation. It doesn't work, because I've been doing it too long.
Yeah.
So, and that's probably the hard part, is when we kind of first get into it. You're going to have a tenant threaten you. Well, you're young and you got 3 properties. We're like, they're threatening to sue me, and an attorney called me. What the hell do I do? I'm like, gosh, I don't even have $5.
Yeah.
And, you just got to think logically. Like, because sometimes think about it. Is an attorney going to waste a lot of time over a $200 issue?
No.
But when you get that first attorney call, it kind of makes your butt pucker because you're like, oh, I want to get sued.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll let you go, but just, I think a good question, and a good job. You came in with some questions that you specifically want to answer to, and I appreciate that, because sometimes, again, when I've mentored younger people, they come in and they kind of just, well, I just showed up, like, what are we going to do today? And I'm like, well, this isn't really for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not that it isn't. I get benefit out of it because it makes me think about what we're committed to, and that's a good reminder to me. We are committed to the owner's liability first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so now that I talk about it, well, it requires me to live it, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I do get benefit, but ultimately, the goal is to get you the most benefit out of our dialogue and to get you moving in a direction where you build the confidence where you can hit the ground running and hopefully be further ahead than even other people that are older than you that start out, because you might have people that you're competing with that have a ton of real estate experience, but it doesn't really matter,
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually take you, there's another thing that I'll say, you're probably a ways away from hiring somebody, but you always hire for attitude and train for skill. I care not about experience, to be honest with you, when I hire people. If you have the right attitude, I can make you into a great employee or into a great property manager. If your attitude sucks and you have all the abilities, skills, high IQ in the world, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to want to do it your way. And so always remember that. Go out into the world when you're seeking knowledge and go in with the attitude of learning, and you're always going to succeed. If you go in out with the attitude of I know it all, you're never going to succeed. And I don't get that from you, but many times that's been why I've stopped coaching people too, is they show up and then they start challenging everything I say because they went and read a YouTube video or went and, watched this. And I'm like, I'm living real life here.
Yeah.
And this is stuff I do every day. You can go read all the textbooks you want.
Yeah, you lived it.
A lot of those textbooks were written by people that have never managed a property.
Uh-huh.
So, and again, like I said, I will introduce you, to some of the other people and see if they are willing. They may or may not, and obviously don't take offense if they don't. Some people just are super busy, or maybe they've, other things that sometimes we get burned out. Like right now, I really won't mentor very many people on buying real estate because most of the time they just don't show up. And how it works, and maybe I need to do this with you as well, but you showed up, is I always give them homework. I'm like, well, this is what you need to do to earn the next half hour of my life.
Yeah.
And they never finish it, so then they show up the next time. Sometimes I'm like, is the homework done? They're like, no. I said, well, then our call's over. There's no point to, if you're not taking this seriously, I'm sure as heck not going to waste my, years of experience on somebody that is just calling me to hang out.
Yeah.
Anyway, but have a good day. We'll keep it at 11. If anything ever comes up, just give me advance notice. I'm not asking for 24 hours, but I know that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Because I do have a pretty tight schedule. So.
All right, will do. Thank you.
All right. You bet. Have a good one.
Bye. Fire call. Learned a lot. Thank you for watching and listening. Stay tuned for more. Goodbye.